Welcome back to the channel, guys, and welcome to Grind Highlights featuring Me262 a1u4, P61 Black Widow, and T14, the rank 2 IS-6. So, strap yourselves in. Ho 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 ho! Nice. It's always fun to get an air kill with the Narwhal. Strap yourselves in for some exciting tank RB CAS action and enjoy. And we're starting off with a clip from the Me262 Narwhal, and because this has an autocannon of a rather large caliber, 50 millimeters if I'm not mistaken, the fire rate is somewhat lower than what you would expect for a fighter. But this is classified as a jet fighter, and we managed to take down an aircraft that it could have seen in its day, so historical realism. And could you imagine how helpless a P47 would be against an Me262 in a real engagement? You'd pretty much just have to hope for me to miss all my shots, like I'm doing now. How I wish that I had even some 20 millimeters to back up this big gun, but my job was to take down larger targets, moving at lower speeds. So, in your typical encounter, that wouldn't be so bad. I flew out to attack and harass ground targets, and it's somewhat difficult to get a kill with the 262 on ground targets. But it's pretty easy to immobilize enemy tanks, hit them in the engine compartment, and you see us taking some fire from the ground. So it can actually sort of be a good support for your team, and I've covered that in other videos. I have a lot of videos covering the Narwhal because this is one of my favorite planes. And we're going to pick up one more air kill here. So again, that wasn't what was on the menu, but ordering off menu is one of my favorite parts of being a repeat customer, so enjoy. Now we're diving on this jug, and there's not much he can do. In fact, there's nothing he can do. He's going very low speed. He dropped his bombs there, but we were able to zoom away long before this would be a threat to us. And a BF-109 is engaging him a little bit more in his range of speed, so I'm just pulling these high energy maneuvers and critical hit, and then we take him down. Absolutely dominating. So the T14 you saw briefly there, we got taken down by artillery fire. Of course, this is a different match, and so now we're leisurely looping in the P61 looking for our target, and I've cut out all of the filler here, and I'm giving you more killer, less filler. And P61, totally different story, lots and lots of 20 mils, and aiming these guns is a bit awkward for me because they're belly mounted, and the P61 doesn't have the best roll rate, so you really have to plan your playstyle accordingly. It's an airplane that takes a bit of getting used to, but once you are accustomed to its playstyle, there's nothing in the sky quite like the Black Widow. It has good top speed and acceleration in a straight line. It has a good climb rate and acceptable turn time for what it is, a Bowman Zoomer. And then you see us take down an AA. Poor Japanese soul. And finish off our run by crashing into an enemy tank. Our goal was to harvest points there. We wanted to get up to 2018. Again, this is grinding footage, and we're done with the grind. Praise the Lord. So I won't be having to do any more of this. But we J out there, and no, we didn't J out. We pulled an IJN naval landing into that enemy tank, and there we go. Get a kill assist on that enemy that was on our tail. Again, I was talking about the Black Widow. The gunner is an interesting aspect to this plane, very welcome. 450 cals are always welcome, and when they're on a 360 rotating pod, well, that's even better. Easy to pick up a kill there when the enemy's not focusing on us, and you see our energy is much higher than a lot of the aircraft that are ground striking right now, and we're able to pull long strafing maneuvers that take us the length of the battlefield, but we manage to keep our energy high so that we can evade enemy fire, as you see, and have enough speed to engage enemy aircraft when they get on our tail, and that will happen in the Black Widow because you're a rather large target. We have our defensive gunner, and if we're very nice and we ask them politely, then enemy yaks will linger on our tail until we've turned them into a ball of fire. So fingers crossed for that. And you can see we're playing very aggressively here, going for hits on that whirlwind, and he can just shred us to pieces if he gets a good look at us. Here we go, enemy fighter on our tail. Let's see if we can harvest some more points, and we're in the game for points at this time. Kill assist, I'll take it. And he's still on our tail. We pick up another assist. Not bad at all. P61 Black Widow, the assistinator, yeah. So, here we go again. Are you starting to see a pattern? This is a different kind of flight than what you would see in Air RB, where your goal is to actually survive the match. Here I've gotten enough points to spawn in a fighter and a tank, and I'm just trying to harvest as many points for the match as possible. And if we manage to get a lucky pilot snipe, well, lucky, when you have 450 cals pointing in the enemy's direction, luck just seems to come your way. But lucky in the sense that we didn't get shredded by that guy. The downside to the P61 is that it has a lot of surface area, and especially that twin boom tail design is susceptible to elevator damage. Now in real life, the P61 had redundant controls on its control surfaces, so that if some cables snapped, it could still, with the cables that were going through the other boom, control its elevator. However, in War Thunder, that redundancy is not modeled, so you have more control surfaces that can be taken out more easily, and if they take out one of your cables, they've taken out all of your control cables. So that's the way that works at this point in the game. Not that I'm complaining. I have a whole lot of defensive firepower, as you can see, that can even the playing field. And on a similar note, the engines in the P61 do catch fire rather easily, but they can also be put out. But we weren't interested in that. We jumped into our T14 after that, and you don't need to see what happened to the rest of the match. It was just a bunch of tank stuff. So, speaking of tank stuff, here we are again in the T14, and I decided to show you a little bit of an exciting match. Now, this is the new French map, and I love it, not just because les châteaux in this map are just beautiful, very nice, pretty landscape, quaint houses. You can smell the bakeries. A town of 600 bakeries under siege, and we're here to save the day, delivering American Twinkies to German tanks of all stripes. But we're going to try and pick on some Panzer IVs on this map. The T14 often faces the Sturmgeschützes with the 75mm cannon and similarly armed Panzer IV F2s and above. And while they can pose a threat, there's plenty of places that the 75 can go through, the German 75, can go through the T14's armor, but if you know what you're doing, and oddly enough, The armor layout of this tank is a bit different than your typical American tank, and if you turn your turret away from the enemy, it's actually the flat parts of your turret that are thinner armor, and the rounded sections are rather thick, so you can actually bounce shots better when you're not looking at the enemy. It makes you feel like an IS-6 in that regard, where you want to angle your turret and give your hull maybe a slight angle, but not too much. With the T14, you have a machine gunner position in the hull that is a blatant weak spot in the armor, but it's rather difficult to penetrate as well. It's got some things going on that make it not the easiest to hit, and if you put bushes there, that's not a problem. And people complain about the size of this map, but you can see that in rather short order we were engaging our first enemy. That little paperweight of a Russian mobile gun. It's sort of an SPG that counts as a tank destroyer in the game, and designed to provide firepower to the most hazardous MOS in the Russian army, that is the airborne troops. Throughout the wars, it's paratroops who suffer the most heavy losses. They're often very well trained and equipped, but the nature of being dropped behind enemy lines makes your lifespan, your survival rate, much smaller. Speaking of which, we're shredding to pieces these German tanks. We got a good hit on a Panzer IV, and we're engaging another one of those Panzer Menace at medium range, I would say. And this is where the armor of the T14 can excel. Stug, we keep on getting hits into his transmission, but we can't transmit those into a kill, so we're persisting. And because they haven't managed to get a good pen on us yet, we're still rather confident, but there's no call to stay in the same spot and give them a free kill. So I'm looping around the building here just to give myself a bit of a reposition, just make them re-aim a bit and maybe get them off my scent a small amount. Anytime you have to make the enemy readjust where he's aiming, you increase your chances, especially at long range, of avoiding enemy fire. And we've decided that, sitting around up here and trading shots at long range with the long 75 of the Germans is not the best way to play this tank. So we're advancing off to the side a bit. This is just a tiny amount of flanking maneuver, something the T14 again excels at. So our goal is to loop around and get a shot at the sides of those Sturmgeschützes, or at least from an angle where they aren't expecting me. And we're peeking out. That one fails to connect, but it looks like we haven't been targeted yet, so that's good. Our repositioning was a success. Looks like one enemy down. Still no hits. Oh wow. Let's get closer. And I usually do more cuts in my videos, but I felt like this was a good show of what this map can be like. You can still use a tank that's designed for closer range engagements. The T14 with its short 75mm is not the best at long range, but you can still use this tank on this map fairly well. This is actually a well-designed map. Now, a lot of people complain about the size of the map, but it only takes you a couple of minutes to get into combat, and I love having options for moving around, and that's something that the rolling hills of this map provide. And if you want urban combat with shorter engagement ranges, well, there's quite a bit of town, and there's even some buildings and pillboxes for cover on the more open areas. All in all, I'd consider this a great map. I like the bigger maps because the faster vehicles can get places with a little bit more space to breathe before the heavies show up. And slower vehicles still have a role because you can hold down vital areas. And you will feel it's different than the meta. That's the thing. A lot of people complain, and perhaps rightfully so, when something that's introduced is different than what's the meta of the game. And what is metagaming? It's playing the game within the game, or playing the bigger game, playing to win, you might say. So folks that don't appreciate this map, they don't like it because it's not like the maps that they're used to doing well in. But I like doing things differently, and if things don't work out, well, then I'll change my tactic and maybe learn something. And speaking of learning something, I'm kind of surprised how many shots we've bounced off of this Wirbelwind, but that's the nature of the American short 75 at a medium range. He's at what, about 600 meters or so. The gun drops off in penetrating power. Now that one, 50 millimeters of armor. Come on. It drops off in power fairly rapidly. And maybe it's just me, but I've also noticed that in Tank RB, and I've been playing mostly RB, so I can't really comment on arcade battles, but in Tank RB, rounds have been sort of not registering the best. I'll refer back to about a month ago when I was shooting at the flat side of a Tiger 2's turret with, oh geez, what was it? I think it was the American 90mm with, I think it's around 160 millimeters of pen on the APHE round, against armor that's what 60 millimeters, if that thick, and I was shooting at the flat side of it. No add-on armor tracks to explain why the round simply splashed and disappeared as though it never existed. And every now and then I'll have that happen where the round just splashes on armor that you do the math in your head and you're like, that should have gone through. And it's not always Russian, so but T-34 armor is notorious, especially, we would have had that one, especially the top armor on the T-34 when you're in an airplane is nigh impenetrable. I'm thinking especially of the Hispano 20 mils armor piercing round. It's supposed to get around 40 millimeters of pen. There's no chance of going through the top of a T-34. But I digress. We're doing very well in the T-14 because we've positioned ourselves. Now, earlier in the match we were bouncing shots, but at this point it's our choice of movement that has really allowed us to get these kills and kill assists. We haven't seen any enemies that are looking directly at us, so this is the kind of map manipulation that you can use in an M18 at higher tier, or, you know, honestly, even an M5. A Stuart could, is it an M4, or whatever, even a Stuart light tank could employ this kind of movement and do well. But again, we're in the T14, and one of the advantages of this as a heavy tank, again, this is a rank 2 IS-6, it has a reasonably solid armor layout, but against the German 75 you have to really use your armor well, and good mobility. And the gun is very capable of one-shotting enemy tanks, even with the reduced effectiveness because of add-on armor that you'll see on a lot of the Panzer IVs and Stugs, and some of the rather trollish armor layouts that you can see at this tier. But with a little bit of luck and a small amount of being in the right place at the right time, you can do very well. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed the match. This was a lot of fun for me. I rambled a bit today, but I'm still very tired. I'm sick and I've got a sick baby at home. Tank baby is taking a nap now, but all morning she was just yelling at me and saying, "Dada! Dada!" Because she wanted me to make it all better, but she's all full of snot and phlegm, and she's blowing little snot bubbles, and it's hard for her to breathe while she's eating, so it's hard for her to eat, and she's just having a tough time, but she's getting the rest she needs, and Daddy's here to take care of her. Anyway guys, have a good one. Bye bye.